my tip, if you like, would really be to build those meaningful connections with the people that you work for, and actually find out what makes them engaged, find out what makes them tick, if you like, and actually listen to them and sort of understand their needs and try and work with them to achieve those. Because obviously there's organizational needs, but there's also the needs of your workers. And if we can align the two, that's when you really get that performance that you're looking for as a business. Sometimes it's hard to find that time, but I think protecting that time to actually talk to the people that you are working for, being approachable, discussing kind of any issues that come up, and really valuing and validating what they say, that it's actually important, is a huge step, I think, towards helping people feel psychologically safe and sort of well engaged at work.
I'm Shivani Gupta, I'm your host. I'm so excited to have Carolyn Knight. I had an opportunity to meet Carolyn when I was interviewing her for the Business Checks, which is a great organisation that I support. And I just thought, wow, some of the things that Carolyn's an expert in and what she speaks about and writes about would be so great for this particular audience. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She's a senior lecturer at the University of Queensland, or known as UQ. Her research focuses on understanding how we can actually design work which is really healthy and fantastic and optimal for individuals as well as for businesses. Her research interests include work design, remote and hybrid work, such a big topic right now, work design reinventions, interventions, as well as she collaborates with researchers and practitioners and industry partners. She's also got an attracted funding not only locally but internationally for over $1 million in industry and university grants, which is amazing. She completed a PhD in the Institute of Work Psychology, and her list goes on and on. She has also published a number of top-tier academic and practitioner journals. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you very much, Shivani. It's a great welcome.
And yes, as I said, your CV is long. Tell us a little bit about, one of the things I always want to start off is who you are today, but also as a result of some of the adversity or challenges that you face. So tell us a little bit about one or two of those, Carolyn, that were kind of those pivotal moments into defining who you are today.
Yeah, okay. So one of the key things I think about actually is an early job I had as I was going down the clinical psychology route, which is a little bit different. And I took on a role as an assistant psychologist at a forensic unit with high dependency and challenging behaviors and learning difficulties, which was really, really hard sort of to engage with these patients. But also, I think when I was there, what I really noticed was the lack of sort of resources, that staff kind of resources around for managing these patients in a safe manner, and also for us working with them. And I saw a whole lot of basically burnout, I guess, of a lot of staff and poor staff wellbeing. I think for me, that was quite sort of pivotal in realizing that, obviously as a sort of psychologist, I was there more for the patients, but it's the people that are looking after them also have to be really well to be able to be functional for the patients. And that was a huge sort of insight into, psychological well-being of staff, how to manage that, what kind of resources they might need. And looking back, I mean, I didn't know a lot about work design then, but looking back, they just had awful work design, essentially. And I think that was quite pivotal for me in sort of realizing all those different challenges within organizations and how difficult they're actually to surmount. So, following that, actually it was several years later, but then I ended up doing it for my master's in research medicine psychology and did a occupational psychology thesis, which was in work engagement. And that sort of led me to my PhD. So it was, I think for me, sort of as a career point, that was quite pivotal in sort of realizing, before we can do anything with patients, we need to get the people looking after them sort of right as well. And how do we create work which is kind of healthy and enables people to perform at their best, to be able to, do this sort of work. That's some of the things.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. With COVID, the landscape of how we work, and I know you've written a lot about this, you spent a lot of time researching it, but also every business owner, every leader in a business wants the business to grow. And so through that lens of your research, Carolyn, what are some of the thoughts and, what are some of your ideas in terms of, some tips around how to grow businesses?
Yeah, okay. So thinking about it from that COVID perspective, if you like, so some of my more recent research has sort of been looking at the impact of hybrid and remote work on individuals and that well-being. So I think for me, the relational side is what really suffers potentially when you're working from home. So, having meaningful relationships with people, being able to connect with people. So I feel that following that, my sense would be, people make businesses work. It's not obviously the business isn't based on the buildings and, bricks and mortar. It's kind of based on people and looking after them. So my tip, if you like, would really be to build those meaningful connections with the people that you work for, and actually find out what makes them engaged, find out what makes them tick, if you like, and actually listen to them and sort of um, understand their needs and try and work with them to achieve those. Because obviously there's organizational needs, but there's also the needs of your workers. And if we can align the two, that's when you really get that performance that you're looking for as a business. So yeah, I would really suggest, and I'm sure many managers are doing this, but it's finding, sometimes it's hard to find that time, but I think protecting that time to actually talk to the people that you are working for, being approachable, discussing kind of any issues that come up, and really valuing and validating what they say, that it's actually important, is a huge step, I think, towards helping people feel psychologically safe and sort of well engaged at work.
Yeah. And so when I listen to you sort of speaking about that there's like that employee's perspective and the business growth perspective, and then also that people side of it. Are there
Yeah.
any other things that you go, hey, by the way, if you were really looking at engaging some of your people, which is an issue that so many businesses face, and retaining key talent, would there be any tips around people that, business leaders and entrepreneurs that are listening to this could also put into practice?
Yeah, I mean, obviously coming from a work design perspective, I do think a lot of it is around designing that work so that it's high quality. So there's things like, as a manager, working with people so that you give them autonomy over how and when, potentially when they do their work and how they go about it, and not sort of close monitoring them overly, because that can create a lot of stress. A lot of my research shows that that sort of close monitoring is not effective, and just creates anxiety and, yeah, distress. So one way is basically to design work where you're kind of giving people autonomy, you trust them. Really, trust is super important for employees, and valuing what they say. So, but also providing that support. So things like autonomy and support, and constructive feedback on what they're doing, um, is very helpful for developing individuals and helping to grow people, I guess, and enable them to get the kind of or learn the kind of skills that they need to progress.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Carolyn, everybody, when they're faced with challenges, addresses that differently. Some people have a process, some people have a methodology. You've got a PhD, you do lots of research. Tell me about how you, when a challenge comes your way, work, personal, whatever, how do you go about doing it?
Yeah, okay. So this will be different for different people. And just as a sort of caveat, I mean, I haven't sort of studied how to overcome challenges specifically, but for me, um, I think it's worth, depends what the challenge is, but if it's worth taking time to process it, I think, rather than sort of reacting quickly. Definitely take that time to process, talk to a lot of different people. I tend to talk to a lot of different people about the problem, find out different perspectives. Also just let it sit a bit. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but I think part of moving on is actually accepting, okay, yeah, you might be feeling these things right now, but that's okay, and this is one phase, but it will pass. And then doing something completely different. So I'm a massive trail runner, or an avid trail runner, I'd say. And I think for me, sort of getting out into the bush and exploring trails is one way of sort of switching off. And I think that's also helpful. So if you tie a few of these things together, take a bit of time away, but also, yeah, let the problem sit, talk to different people, then eventually you'll come back round to a kind of solution, a way of moving forward. And even if it's not that kind of problem, maybe it's just a problem that needs talking out and talking through. Then I think having well, having a few close friends, or people, colleagues, that you can sort of confide in, have a good one-to-one with, I think that creates a lot of meaningful connection, and super helpful for that type of problem, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Um, Carolyn, you've achieved so many things already. Tell us about future aspirations, 1, 5, 10, 20 years out, BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goal. What are some of the things that you want to do? And so happy to talk about your running as well. So tell us a little bit about some of the different, things that you want to still do.
Yeah, well, sort of in my professional life, I guess. I'm obviously just a mid-career researcher at the moment, so I'm still carrying on with that trajectory, if you like. So I'd like to do a lot more research, like to develop my sort of research portfolio and do more around that relational aspect of work and how it impacts people, but bring that more to industry. So working with industry to actually trial and test some of these strategies or interventions, if you like, within organizations, see how they actually work. That's sort of in the more maybe short, now 5, plus years to try and develop that. It's a bit hard to say what will happen in 20 years' time, so who knows? I might have my own sort of lab and my own people and sort of researching this in more in a bigger way, I guess, but continuing with my this line of work and the sort of remote and hybrids and the future of work, I guess, and potentially branching out into how AI and is impacting people as well and their connections and relationships would be super interesting. So yeah, it's a hard one. That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. Especially, I think, it's becoming more and more difficult to sort of see 15, 20 years out, as you said, because with things changing so fast. What about how do you, and I know you talked a little bit about your running, but how do you manage your well-being? Like, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, tell me about how you manage some of your own wellness when you are doing so much research and sharing and papers
Yeah.
with.
I think it's definitely critical to maintain time away from work. So obviously some people are working all hours of the day and night. So I do take that time, particularly at weekends, just to shut off. Weekends my time in the mornings to go running. I do that with friends. So I have a really great social running group, if you like, out on the trails, and we'll just go out for a few hours and literally talk about nothing but trails and races and running stuff. So I think for me, that's a huge aspect of my life. And those people have been they're very positive, inclusive people. I think if you've got people like that in your life, which are away from work, it kind of gives you a different perspective and you're able to kind of switch off and come. And sometimes, they can say things that make you think, oh, actually, that might help. I can see now, look at the different problem, a work problem differently, or whatever. And that can be very helpful. But I think taking that time, but also just in the general work day, sort of being compassionate. If you don't get everything done that you intended to on your list, it's okay. Things happen. We're only human. So I think it's sometimes acknowledging, yeah, that we are just human. We're not perfect. We're not going to get everything done or whatever it is, and we might make mistakes, but acknowledging them and sort of moving on, learning from it. I think that's the most sort of important thing. So being sort of patient with yourself and compassionate is also very important, as well as having those sort of outside interests and hobbies, I think, to keep you going.
And tell me, Carolyn, if people want to follow you, I'm just also wondering, maybe there's a couple of bits of papers that you could share with us or we could share as part of the podcast notes. But if people want to follow you, read your work, what are the best platforms to find you?
Probably LinkedIn you can follow me on. I would say I'm not hugely active on there, but I do post now and again. But I mean, Google Scholar, you just hop onto Google and put in Google Scholar and you'll come up with you can put in my name and get my profile. So you can see kind of things that I've been publishing, which probably has the most complete list. But also you can email me at caroline.knight@uq.edu.au. That's also another option. But yeah, I'm not a huge social media sort of person at the moment. So yeah, probably LinkedIn or email me are the best ways to do that.
I love the variety of the show because this podcast, because we had somebody that has a huge following and is really into social media earlier today. And, then we've had that. So it's just good to get that balance in terms of being able to do that. Carolyn, if you want to just stay on for a moment, that'd be great. But I just so appreciate you. Thank you for making the time. I know you're traveling at the moment. And so really appreciate the time to be on here.
It's a pleasure. I really appreciate being asked. And it's great to share some of this with you. Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you for tuning in to Engage and Retain People podcast. I hope that today's podcast sparks a new and maybe one idea that you can bring back to your business right away. Take time to connect, listen, and invest in your people because they are your most valuable asset. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders. And don't forget to leave a review. It helps us manage and reach more people just like you. Join us next week for more actionable insights to keep you on the path to engage and retain your people. Until then, keep going. Keep investing in your people and yourself. This is Shivani. Stay inspired.